My name is Clara Voss, and I was 31 years old when my family laughed because my grandmother left me a motel key. Not a house, not a check, not a place on the company board. A motel key. It was old enough that the brass had gone dull around the edges, tied to a cracked blue plastic tag with white numbers stamped into it. Room 12. The attorney placed it on the polished conference table like it was evidence in a trial. For 1 second, nobody moved. Then my cousin Rebecca laughed so loudly her husband put a hand on her shoulder, not to stop her, but to steady her, because she was enjoying herself too much. My Uncle Martin leaned back in his chair and said, "Well, that makes sense. Clara always did belong with the housekeeping keys." My mother looked down at her lap, not because she was ashamed of him, because she was trying not to smile. That hurt more. The attorney Daniel Rowe did not laugh. He folded his hands over a gray folder and watched me the way a doctor watches a patient before delivering news that will divide a life into before and after. Around the table, the rest of the Voss family was still glowing from what they had received. My Uncle Martin had been given Grandma Mae's lake house in Door County and $700,000. My mother Elaine received the condo in Madison and $400,000. Rebecca received a trust fund for her children and a seat on the Family Hospitality Advisory Council, a title she had already begun typing into her phone. My younger cousin Devin received Grandma's investment portfolio because, as the will said, he has shown interest in finance, which meant he watched market videos online and once convinced Grandma to buy crypto at Thanksgiving. Several relatives received checks. A church received a donation. A local museum received Grandma's antique quilts. And me, the granddaughter who had spent 5 years running night audits at her motel, changing sheets when staff called in sick, unclogging sinks, balancing books, driving Grandma to cardiology appointments, reading lease agreements aloud when her eyes got tired, and sleeping on a cot in the office when her blood pressure spiked after midnight. I got room 12. Rebecca wiped under one eye. "That is actually perfect," she said. Grandma had a sense of humor. My Uncle Martin pointed toward the key. "Maybe there is a coupon for a free night?" More laughter. Soft. Comfortable. Family laughter. The kind that knows exactly where to cut because it has been sharpening itself on you for years. I was the unfinished one. The practical one. The girl who left college in Milwaukee during her junior year and never went back. The one who helped out at the Harbor Lantern Motel, which is what my family called it when they wanted my labor to sound temporary and my life to sound small. Helping out. That was the phrase they used for 5 years of unpaid overtime. 5 years of watching Grandma Mae turn from a woman who could silence a contractor with one eyebrow into a woman who needed both hands to lift a coffee mug. 5 years of learning which rooms had bad water pressure, which long-term guests paid late, but honestly, which vendors padded invoices, and which family members only visited when Grandma's signature was needed. I picked up the key. It was cold, heavier than it looked. There was a folded note underneath it, written in my grandmother's careful, slanted handwriting. "When they laugh, sleep in room 12. I read it twice. My mother sighed. "Clara, please do not make this into one of your little mysteries." One of my little mysteries. That was what she called my habit of asking questions after people lied. I looked at Daniel Rowe. He gave me the smallest nod. Not permission. Confirmation. Something in that room shifted. Not for them. For me. I closed my fingers around the key and stood. Uncle Martin frowned. "Where are you going?" I held up the key. "To check in." Before I tell you what was hidden in room 12, I need to tell you about Mae Voss. Everybody in La Crosse knew my grandmother as the woman who owned the Harbor Lantern Motel. 36 rooms, one ice machine that only worked when threatened. A lobby with knotty pine walls, a brass bell on the front desk, and a neon sign outside shaped like a lighthouse, even though the Mississippi River is not the ocean, and everybody knew it. Grandma said accuracy mattered less than welcome. She bought the motel in 1978 after my grandfather died and left her with 2 children, 3 unpaid invoices, and a station wagon that stalled at stoplights. People told her to sell. She did the opposite. She cleaned rooms herself, learned bookkeeping from a retired bank teller, fixed towel racks with a screwdriver she kept in her purse, and built the Harbor Lantern into the kind of place families returned to every summer because someone there remembered their names. Not fancy, never fancy, but clean, warm, honest. Grandma Mae believed businesses had souls, and souls were built out of small decisions. Do you refund the man whose wife went to the hospital after check-in? Do you let the single mother pay Friday after her paycheck clears? Do you keep room 4 open for the trucker who always arrives at midnight and leaves peppermint candies for the front desk? Uncle Martin called those soft policies. Grandma called them reasons people came back. I grew up behind that front desk. When other kids learned cursive, I learned the reservation ledger. When I was 9, Grandma taught me how to fold fitted sheets. When I was 12, she taught me how to spot a fake complaint from a real one. When people want free things, she said they get loud. When something is truly wrong, they look tired. I asked her how she knew. She tapped my forehead. Pay attention, Clara. People explain themselves before they use words. That was Grandma Mae. Sharp, unsentimental, kind in ways that required muscle. My mother, Elaine, left lacrosse the first chance she got. She married a dentist in Madison, joined committees, learned tennis, and told people her mother owned a small hospitality property, as if the phrase smelled better than motel. Uncle Martin stayed close enough to call himself loyal, but far enough away to avoid work. He started a regional property management company that mostly managed assets other people had built. He wore monogrammed shirts and talked about unlocking value, which usually meant raising rent and repainting everything gray. He had been trying to convince Grandma to sell the Harbor Lantern for 15 years. Land on that road is worth more than the business, he would say. Grandma would answer, only if you think a place is dirt with paperwork. He hated that. I loved it. I did not plan to come home. I was supposed to graduate from college, become a physical therapist, live somewhere with more coffee shops and fewer people who remembered my middle school haircut. Then Grandma had her first heart episode. It happened on a Tuesday in October. She was 78, still working the desk 3 days a week, still refusing to admit she needed readers stronger than the dollar store pair she wore on a chain. A guest found her sitting on the lobby floor beside the brochure rack, embarrassed and furious. My mother called me from the hospital. Not crying, coordinating. Grandma is stable, she said. But someone needs to be there for a few weeks. Someone. In our family, someone usually meant me if the job was inconvenient and invisible. I drove from Milwaukee to La Crosse that night. Grandma was in bed wires on her chest, hair flattened on one side. She looked smaller. That was the first betrayal of illness. It makes giants look misplaced. When she saw me, she said, "Who is watching the front desk?" I said hello to you too. Front desk, Clara. Your night clerk is there. Tyler steals soda from the vending machine. He is 22. That is old enough to pay $1. I laughed. She did not. That was when I knew I was staying longer than a few weeks. Her recovery was uneven. Good days, bad days. Medication changes, dizziness, blood pressure drops. Then came the arthritis in her hands. Then the cataract surgery. Then the fall behind the laundry room when she insisted she could carry a basket of towels because pride apparently weighs less than cotton. I took a semester off, then another. My scholarship lapsed. My advisor sent forms. I did not complete them. At first, my family thanked me. Clara is such a blessing, my mother told people. Clara is helping out until we find a proper plan, Uncle Martin said. Rebecca posted a photo of Grandma's neon sign and wrote, "Family is everything," with a heart emoji. None of them covered a Tuesday night shift. None of them learned the new medication schedule. None of them sat with Grandma during the panic attacks she had after her fall, when she woke convinced she was late opening the office. I stayed. I did not stay nobly. Some days I stayed angry, some days resentful, some days so tired I put coffee grounds in the filter and forgot the water. But I stayed, and Grandma saw that. She saw everything. The Harbor Lantern was more than a motel by then. It had become a last stop for people between versions of their lives. Nurses working temporary contracts at the hospital stayed in rooms 18 through 22. A divorced father stayed every other weekend when he came to see his kids. A woman named Patrice lived in room 6 for 8 months after her apartment building burned and refused to let anyone call her situation charity because she paid every Friday in cash and exact change. Grandma kept rates lower than the market. Uncle Martin said she was leaving money on the table. Grandma said, "Then the table is too high." The motel staff became my real education. Sandra, who ran housekeeping, taught me how to tell if someone had been crying in a room and did not want anybody to know. Miguel, the maintenance man, taught me how to reset the ancient boiler with a wrench and a prayer. Janice at the front desk taught me which guests needed conversation and which needed the mercy of silence. I learned payroll, vendor contracts, occupancy taxes, insurance renewals, online reviews, the strange emotional violence of people who think paying $89 gives them permission to humiliate a clerk. At family dinners, none of that counted. Rebecca would talk about her nonprofit board. Devin would talk about market cycles. Uncle Martin would ask me if I had thought about finishing something. Something, not school. Something as if my life were an open drawer everyone was tired of looking at. My mother would say, "Your grandmother depends on Clara too much. It is not healthy." Then she would let me drive back to the motel to help Grandma shower. The Thanksgiving before Grandma died, Martin announced he had spoken with a developer from Minneapolis. Just conversation, he said, carving turkey in Grandma's own dining room, as if holding a knife made him host. Grandma looked at him. "What kind of conversation?" "A preliminary one. Land valuation. Possible conversion." Conversion to what? Mixed-use luxury apartments. Retail below. River views. It would be transformational. Grandma set down her fork. "For whom?" Martin smiled. "For the family." I was sitting beside Grandma. I felt her foot press mine under the table. "Not fear?" Warning. She looked at her son and said, "You do not transform a lighthouse into a mirror and call it progress." Martin rolled his eyes. "Mom, it is a motel." Grandma said, "No, Martin. To you, it is a motel because you have never been the person who needed a room." The table went quiet. Rebecca looked embarrassed. My mother whispered, "Mother, please." Grandma turned to me. "Clara, remind me to show you room 12 sometime." Martin laughed. "What is in room 12 buried treasure?" Grandma smiled. "Something better." Room 12 was ordinary. That was the strange part. Ground floor. 2 queen beds. Mustard curtains from 1998 that Grandma refused to replace, because according to her they had survived worse taste than ours. The air conditioner rattled. The bathroom fan sounded like a distant lawnmower. There was a cigarette burn on the left nightstand from before the motel went smoke-free. I had cleaned that room 100 times, slept in it twice during snowstorms when the roads were too bad to drive home. Fixed the toilet chain. Replaced the lampshade. Chased a bat out with a laundry basket while Miguel laughed so hard he had to sit down. I knew room 12. Or I thought I did. After the will reading, I drove straight there. The motel looked different that afternoon. Maybe because Grandma was gone. Maybe because grief makes familiar places look like they are waiting for someone to return and explain the rules. The neon lighthouse was off in daylight. The office bell sat silent. Sandra saw me from the laundry room and came out wiping her hands on a towel. "You okay?" "Number." She looked at the key, then at my face. Mae planned something. It was not a question. "Did you know?" Sandra shook her head. "Only that she told me if you ever came here after a family meeting, looking like you had swallowed a storm, I should give you space." I almost smiled. "That sounds like her." Sandra touched my arm. "Room 12 is clean." Of course it was. I walked across the cracked parking lot. The key turned stiffly in the lock. Inside, everything looked normal. 2 beds, mustard curtains, a framed print of a sailboat that had never seen Wisconsin. I stood in the center of the room and felt foolish. Sleep in room 12. That was the instruction. Not search. Not open. Sleep. I sat on the bed closest to the window. Then I noticed the envelope on the pillow. My name. Clara. In Grandma's handwriting. I opened it carefully. 1 sheet. You always look under the lamp first. Do not. Rest. For once, do what I said. Grandma. I laughed. Then I cried. Then, because I was too tired to argue with a dead woman, I took off my shoes, lay down on top of the bedspread, and closed my eyes. I meant to rest for 10 minutes. I slept for 11 hours. When I woke, dawn was pressing pale light through the mustard curtains. For a moment, I forgot. Then grief returned. So did the key, the envelope, the instruction. Sleep in room 12. I sat up and noticed something I had missed in years of cleaning that room. The framed sailboat was hanging slightly crooked. Not enough for a guest to complain. Enough for Grandma Mae, who had once made me rehang a lobby photo 3 times because level is a moral position. I lifted the frame. Behind it was a small wall safe. I stared at it, then laughed again. Of course. The safe had a keypad. No clue. No note. I tried Grandma's birthday. Nothing. The motel opening year. Nothing. My birthday. Nothing. Then I looked at the plastic key tag in my hand. Room 12. I entered 0012. The safe clicked. Inside were 3 things. A sealed envelope, a flash drive, and a phone number written on Harbor Lantern stationery. Call Daniel after you watch. The flash drive plugged into the old television through a small media adapter that had been left in the safe. Grandma appeared on the screen. She was sitting in the lobby chair by the brochure rack, wearing her blue cardigan and the pearl earrings she wore when she wanted to remind people she could still be dangerous politely. Clara, she said, if you are watching this, then I am dead. Your family has laughed and you finally slept. My throat closed. She smiled into the camera. Good. You needed it. I sat on the edge of the bed with my hands over my mouth. Grandma continued, I am going to tell you what the will did not. The will is for the people who wanted things. This is for the person who kept the lights on. Then she explained. 22 years earlier, after Grandpa died and Martin first pushed her to sell, Grandma had created the Harbor Lantern Trust with attorney Daniel Rowe. The trust owned the motel land, the business, the long-term guest contracts, 2 apartment buildings behind the motel, 3 rental cottages near the river, and a reserve account she had grown quietly for decades. The will did not include those assets because they were never in the estate. They were already in the trust, and I had been named successor trustee, primary beneficiary, full operating authority. I paused the video. The room was silent except for the air conditioner clicking to life. I pressed play again. Grandma looked directly at the camera. Current conservative value is about $21 million. Do not make that face. Money is only frightening when fools are standing near it. I made a sound halfway between a laugh and a sob. Martin will say, you are not qualified. Elaine will tell you to be reasonable. Rebecca will offer to help with branding. Devin will use the word portfolio as if it has magical powers. Listen politely if you must. Then call Daniel. She leaned closer. Clara, you know this place because you loved it when it was inconvenient. That is the only kind of love I trust. The video ended. I sat there until the screen went dark. Then I called Daniel Rowe. He answered on the second ring. I was wondering if you would sleep first, he said. She told you. She predicted you would try not to. What happens now? Now Daniel said we give your family the real reading. Daniel's office looked different the second time. Or maybe I did. The first time I sat at the end of the conference table while my family laughed over Grandma's gifts. This time I sat beside the attorney. That alone changed the temperature of the room. Daniel had called a formal trust notification for Monday morning. Martin arrived first because men who think they are in charge like to be seen occupying space before anyone else. He wore a charcoal suit and the smile he used for bankers. My mother came next. Rebecca arrived with her laptop and a portfolio folder. Devin came with sunglasses on his head and the bright expression of someone who had Googled trust dispute the night before. Sandra came too. That surprised them. So did Miguel and Janice. Daniel had invited key employees per Grandma's written instruction. Martin frowned. Why is staff here? Sandra's jaw tightened. Daniel answered before I could. Because Mae Voss considered them relevant parties to the operating continuity plan. Martin laughed. Operating continuity plan for a motel. Daniel opened his folder. For Harbor Lantern Hospitality Holdings. Rebecca's smile froze. Devin sat up. Daniel continued. In 2001, Mae Voss established the Harbor Lantern Trust. The trust owns the Harbor Lantern Motel, the underlying land-associated residential properties, rental cottages, operating accounts, reserve funds, and the holding company connected to these assets. Martin said no. Just that. Number. A child's word in a grown man's mouth. Daniel did not look at him. These assets are outside the probate estate and were not part of the will read Friday. The sole successor trustee and controlling beneficiary is Clara June Voss. Rebecca looked at me, then at Daniel, then at the key in front of me. The motel key. Daniel said the motel key led her to the trust notification materials. My mother's voice was quiet. Clara, did you know? Number. Martin pushed back his chair. This is manipulation. My mother was 84. She had heart issues. She was not in a position to make major financial decisions. Daniel slid 3 folders across the table. Mae completed independent capacity evaluations in 2001-2014 and 9 months before her death. All confirm full legal capacity. She reaffirmed the trust each time. Devin muttered, 21 million. Rebecca whispered, what? Daniel looked at his notes. The current conservative valuation is $21.4 million. My mother closed her eyes. Martin stood. I have been advising her for years. Sandra said, you have been trying to sell us for years. The room went silent. Martin turned on her. You do not speak to me like that. I spoke before Sandra could. She does today. Martin looked at me like I had changed shape. Maybe I had. Daniel continued. The trust includes an employee protection clause. No layoff, sale, redevelopment, or conversion may occur for 24 months without unanimous approval from the trustee, the operating manager, and the employee advisory representative. Miguel leaned back. Mae did that. Daniel nodded. She did. Janice wiped her eyes. My grandmother had protected them too. Not sentimentally. Legally. Martin pointed at me. She cannot run this. She has no degree. She cleans rooms. I looked at him. I also know why room 7 loses hot water when room 8 showers first. I know which vendor overcharges for linen service. I know you tried to get Grandma to sign a redevelopment option while she was sedated after cataract surgery. And I know Sandra has been underpaid for 6 years because you told Grandma the budget was too tight while billing the company for consulting lunches. His face changed. Not guilt. Recognition. He had not known I knew. Daniel opened another folder. Mae documented concerns regarding several consulting invoices. We will be reviewing them. Rebecca slowly closed her laptop. Devin stopped looking bright. My mother looked at me with something I could not name. Shock. Maybe regret. Maybe just the pain of realizing she had underestimated the wrong daughter. After the trust meeting, my family scattered the way people do when the room stops serving them. Martin called his attorney before he reached the parking lot. Rebecca sent me a text offering brand strategy support before she had even started her car. Devin asked Daniel whether the investment portfolio could be separated from the outdated lodging component. Daniel told him to put all questions in writing. My mother stayed behind. She stood near the window looking down at the street. "You should have told me," she said. "I did not know. Before today." "What part?" "That you were capable of this." I laughed once. It came out tired. "Mom, that is not a compliment." She flinched. "Good. Some truths deserve to land." She turned toward me. "I worried you had wasted your life there." "No," I said. "You worried my life did not sound impressive when people asked about your children." Her eyes filled. In my family, tears often arrived when accountability did. I did not rush to comfort her. That was new for me. She said, "I did not know what you were doing." "You did not ask." The sentence sat between us, small, heavy. Then she nodded. "One time, I should have." It was not enough to heal anything, but it was more than she had said in 5 years. I left the office with the motel key in my pocket. Outside, Sandra was waiting beside her car. She had a cigarette in one hand she had not lit. "I quit 6 years ago," she said, "but today felt like a Marlboro day." I smiled. "Do not blame me for your relapse." She put the cigarette back in the pack. "Mae would haunt me." "Yes, she would." Sandra looked toward the motel road. "So, boss, do not call me that." "What now?" I looked at the key. The little blue tag. Room 12. "We keep the lights on." Sandra nodded. "That sounds like her." Running the Harbor Lantern was not a victory montage. There was no music, no dramatic shot of me walking through the lobby with a blazer and new confidence. Mostly there was plumbing. The old boiler failed on my 3rd official day as trustee. Room 19 had ants. A travel blogger posted that our decor was haunted by the concept of beige. Miguel said that was fair. I spent mornings with Daniel and afternoons with Sandra, learning the parts of the business I had not been allowed to see before. The reserve account was strong. The properties were worth more than I understood. The motel itself was profitable modestly, but consistently because Grandma had paid off debt years ago and refused every flashy renovation that would have required raising rates beyond what regular people could afford. Martin had been billing consulting fees for strategic development plans Grandma never approved. Rebecca had been asking Grandma for access to marketing funds. Devin had pitched an investment scheme involving short-term rentals and frictionless guest experiences, which Grandma had written on the margin of the proposal. Sounds like a vending machine for loneliness. I kept that page. The employees watched me carefully. Not unkindly, but carefully. They loved Grandma. They were not sure whether I was her continuation or just another Voss with a nicer face. So I did the only thing I knew how to do. I showed up. I worked front desk twice a week. I cleaned rooms when housekeeping was short. I sat with Daniel while he explained fiduciary duty until the words stopped sounding like another language. I met with the manager of the apartment buildings. I reviewed vendor contracts. I learned that owning something is not the same as understanding it. Grandma knew that. That was why she left me work instead of a crown. Martin contested the trust in June. He claimed undue influence, lack of capacity, improper asset transfer. Daniel responded with capacity evaluations, trust documents, video testimony from Grandma, and records of Martin's own attempts to pressure her into redevelopment. The no contest clause froze his lake house transfer and cash gift while the claim was pending. Suddenly, his confidence became expensive. By August, his attorney advised withdrawal. He refused. By September, consulting invoice review revealed $86,000 in questionable charges. By October, Martin withdrew the claim. He sent me no apology. Instead, he sent a letter that said he hoped we could move forward in a spirit of mutual respect. Daniel asked if I wanted to respond. I said no. Silence can be an answer when someone only respects noise. Rebecca came next. She asked for a meeting at the motel cafe. She arrived with no laptop. That was how I knew this might be serious. I was awful at the will reading, she said. I waited. She twisted her wedding ring. I thought if Grandma chose you, it meant the rest of us had been seen clearly. I was not ready for that. I took a sip of coffee. That is the most honest thing anyone in this family has said to me." She looked down. I laughed because I was relieved. Relieved. If you got nothing, then everything I believed about myself stayed true. It was ugly, but it was real. I appreciated real more than pretty. Rebecca asked if she could help with the motel website. I said she could submit a proposal like any vendor. She almost smiled. "Grandma trained you well." "No," I said. "Grandma finally gave me permission to use the training." Rebecca nodded. 3 weeks later, she submitted a proposal. Sandra hated the font. Miguel hated the photos. I hated the phrase rustic nostalgia experience. But the booking system was good. We approved that part. No family discount. No family authority. Work paid for work. That became another rule. My mother took the longest. Elaine Voss had spent most of her life turning away from the motel so she could become the kind of woman who said hospitality property instead of business legacy, instead of debt and concern, instead of shame. She came to the Harbor Lantern in November, alone, wearing jeans I had never seen before. She stood in the lobby for a long time, looking at the knotty pine walls. "I hated this place," she said. I was behind the desk. "I know. I thought it trapped her. Maybe it freed her." My mother touched the brass bell. "When I was young, I wanted her to sell it and move somewhere clean." "The motel is clean." "You know what I mean." "I do." She looked at me. I was embarrassed. There it was. Not softened, not dressed. Embarrassed. I felt the old hurt move in me. Not like a knife now. More like a bruise pressed by accident. Of her. Of needing this place. Of growing up here. Of guests knocking on our door at midnight. Of smelling like laundry soap at school. And of me. Her eyes filled. Yes, the word was terrible. It was also the first honest bridge she had built. I nodded. "Thank you for telling the truth." She flinched again but stayed. After a moment she said, "Did she leave me anything besides the condo?" "Yes." I reached under the desk and took out a small envelope Daniel had given me. Grandma had instructed me to deliver it only if my mother came to the motel alone. Elaine opened it with shaking hands. "My daughter, you spent your life trying to become someone who had not come from this place. I let you. Maybe too much. But do not mistake escape for growth. The motel fed you. So did I. If you want Clara in your life, do not ask her to make her work smaller so you can recognize it. Come home only if you can stand where you came from." "Mom." My mother sat down in the lobby chair. The same chair from Grandma's video. She cried without trying to make the tears useful. I let her. Then I handed her a tissue from the front desk box and went back to checking in a guest. That may sound cold. It was not. It was boundaries. And it was work. Both mattered. 1 year after Grandma died, Room 12 reopened as something else. Not a guest room. A respite room. I had been thinking about it since the morning I woke there after 11 hours of sleep and realized Grandma's first instruction had not been to search or fight. It had been to rest. The Harbor Lantern had always been a place for travelers. I wanted Room 12 to become a place for people who were not traveling anywhere except through one hard season. We partnered with the hospital, the domestic violence shelter, and a nonprofit that helped families after apartment fires. Room 12 became available free of charge for 3-night emergency stays. A nurse whose contract was delayed. A grandmother bringing grandkids to safety. A man whose wife was having surgery and who could not afford the hospital hotel. A daughter caring for her father who needed one night where someone else answered the phone. Sandra stocked the room with better towels than the others. Miguel fixed the bathroom fan so it no longer sounded like a lawnmower. Janice put a small card on the nightstand. Rest first, decide later. That was Grandma's real inheritance. Not $21 million. Not property. Not control. Permission to rest before fighting. The first woman who stayed in Room 12 after we changed it was named Tessa. She arrived with 2 grocery bags, 1 child, and a face that looked like she had been apologizing for needing help since birth. When she checked out 3 days later, she left a note. I slept. Just those 2 words. I took the note to the office and taped it inside the old reservation ledger, underneath Grandma's handwriting. When they laugh, sleep in room 12. I added my own line. When you wake, keep the light on for someone else. Thanksgiving came again. This time we held it in the motel lobby. Not my mother's condo. Not Martin's house. The Harbor Lantern. Sandra made turkey. Miguel made rice and beans. Janice brought 3 pies and insisted none of them were store-bought, which was true unless you counted crust. My mother came early and folded napkins without being asked. Rebecca brought her kids and made them carry chairs. Devin came late, said something awkward about the market, then helped Miguel fix a loose handrail without mentioning investment strategy once. Martin did not come. That was fine. Absence can be peaceful when it stops pretending to be power. Before dinner, I stood near the brass bell and looked around. Employees, guests, family, people who had been paid, people who had been protected, people who had been wrong, people who were trying, some better than others. Grandma's framed photo sat on the counter. Blue cardigan, pearls, eyes sharp enough to cut ribbon. I tapped the bell once. Everyone quieted. I did not make a speech. Grandma hated speeches unless she was the one giving them. I only said to Mae, who knew a place is not just land. Sandra lifted her glass. Miguel said to room 12. People repeated it. Room 12. My mother looked at me across the lobby. For the first time, she did not look embarrassed. That was enough for 1 year. If you are listening to this because you have been laughed at by people who mistook your quiet work for failure, I want you to hear me. They may not know what you have learned in the rooms they were too important to enter. They may not count the shifts, the keys, the ledgers, the medications, the midnight calls, the repairs, the small decisions that keep a place from falling apart. They may call your life small because they cannot imagine value without applause. Let them laugh. Laughter is often what people do right before the truth asks for identification. My grandmother left me a motel key. A cracked blue tag, room 12. My family thought it was proof that I had belonged with the housekeeping cart and the laundry bags. They were wrong. That key opened a safe. The safe opened a trust. The trust opened a future I had been living inside without knowing it. But more than that, the key opened my understanding of myself. I was not the granddaughter who failed to leave. I was the one who stayed long enough to know what was worth saving. My name is Clara Voss. I still keep the Harbor Lantern key on my ring. Not because I need it. The doors are electronic now mostly. I keep it because some pieces of metal remember what people forget. Room 12 is full tonight. A woman whose husband is in surgery is sleeping there while Sandra watches the front desk. The neon lighthouse is glowing outside, inaccurate and beautiful. The air conditioner still rattles a little because Miguel says perfection makes old buildings nervous. And if you ever find yourself holding something your family says is worthless, I hope you look closer. Sometimes a phone number is not just a phone number. Sometimes a ledger is not just a ledger. Sometimes a recipe card is not just a recipe. And sometimes a motel key with a cracked blue tag is not the end of your inheritance. It is the door.